Welcome to the Friday vlog here at the Order of Eden. So if you recall a vlog that I made, the one right before I went on a hiatus from YouTube, I talked about a 3-part vlog series that I wanted to do. The first part was what I love about technology. The second part, which is happening right now, is about a primitive life. And the episode next week will be a suggested path for how to synthesize those two ideas going forward. While talking about tech, I said that I love technology for its information, its connection, and its freedom. And today I'm going to talk about what I love about a primitive existence. What created this idea for me was when I was told about the apparently fairly popular subgenre of YouTube known as primitive technology. And there are a whole lot of people who make these kind of videos. They're videos where the person doesn't talk, but they make something using Stone Age technology. Whether it's a mud hut or making a water bottle out of a gourd or making clay pots, all kinds of things. I'll link to some of them down below. But these got me thinking about the stark differences between life today and several thousand years ago. So here it goes, what I love about primitive life. The first thing I love about primitive life is the physicality of it all. It's no mystery that humans are physical creatures. We need to move and exercise and do hard things to be properly functional. Our muscles won't work if we don't move them enough, and even our internal chemistry gets drastically off balance if we don't eat and exercise well. And those are two things that are very difficult to come by in modern life. We also don't have as many physical accomplishments today. And that's also a matter of work choice and hobbies, and I'll probably dig into that in the synthesis video. But there aren't as many things that we labor for and say, look, I made this pot that I'm drinking water out of. Now, I already hear you objecting. But we work for money and buy stuff. Isn't that the same? I don't think it actually is. I don't think humans are intelligent enough to make that reasoning work. And that's not a knock on anyone. I'm not intelligent enough for that either. Now, humans are wildly intelligent, but especially with something like money, they've done experiments with money where someone is given a debit card and someone is given cash, and they compare how they spend it. And the person who's given cash almost always will either spend less or get more for their money because the cash is a physical thing that they can see themselves spending. The person with the card knows that it's linked to money, but they still overspend because it's just an idea of money, not actual money. So in a modern society, the idea of someone driving to work every day, doing a boring job in a cubicle that they hate, and they get money automatically put in their bank account like every 2 weeks. I think the modern idea of work becomes too conceptual for the person who's doing, let's say, computer programming to associate what he does day in and day out with his actual physical survival. Working a job to get ones and zeros in your bank account and then going out and buying things with it, I think that's far less satisfying than the idea of a close-knit tribe going out, hunting an animal, killing it, and dragging it back and feeding their family with it. I think the modern system just butts up against the limits of human association. So I love the primitive world for its physicality, and second, I love the primitive world for its poetic reasoning. This one might seem even stranger than my first point. But with all the studying that I've done of ancient cultures, whether it be the earliest Jews from the Bible or the other ancient Near Eastern cultures around them, be it African tribes or even the highly advanced Egyptians, all of their thinking seems to be more poetic rather than literal. You see, the ancients lived in an enchanted world. You can even see this in the earliest texts of the Bible. 1 Samuel is a great example, where something will happen like a king and his men go out to battle. They defeat the enemy, and then they come back and say, "The Lord has defeated our enemies this day." Their idea of sacred and secular is just completely intertwined. The incredible night sky that they could see clearly back then without all the light pollution, the stars weren't just burning balls of gas, they were often considered spiritual beings, and they reflected the glory of God. When giving a sermon, even Jesus says, "Consider the lilies of the field, consider the sparrows." All life was teeming with evidence of God and reflections of his kingdom. God was the author and provider of all creation. Poetic reasoning was clear in the myths of other cultures and in their sacred texts, and their non-literal reality was far more magical than ours. One of the greatest defects of the Enlightenment was picturing the entire universe as some cold clockwork mechanism. In the Enlightenment, they took the cosmos, this vibrant ecosystem and all the complexity of reality, and boiled it down to a lifeless, soulless machine. Ancient cultures that don't have reading and writing as the default think about the world in a completely different way, and we've only had that for the past 500 years. Even when we look to the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, we see people who presented their faith in the forms of pictures and paintings and stained glass. They had to use a system where the priest read and recited the same texts and truths every week so that the common people would absorb it. And they used sensory rituals involving candles and incense and water to try to get the point across that they wanted to. I love primitive existence for its silence. And this can be a double-edged sword. You may know that I try to take regular camping trips by myself at least once a year. My planned trip back in March got canceled because of the virus lockdowns, but never fear, autumn is coming. Anyway, sometimes I get to the woods and just hear silence. Just the noise from the forest. And it's the most peaceful thing ever. And other times when I get there, when there's silence and no distraction, you find that your mind is in a frenzied overdrive. And you could be anxious or worried or fearful, but time spent in that silence, time spent without the distractions, can help you confront that chaos and sort it out. We have very little silence in the world today, and it's mostly our fault. We have a constant need for distraction. And even when we don't have our phones or computers sitting in front of us, we're addicted to our own inner dialogue, and it makes us miserable. Not that ancient or primitive people never got distracted or miserable or depressed or addicted, but it was a simpler time in a good many ways, and you are most likely never far from silence. Even if you lived in a big city, right outside the city was probably miles of open land. The earth wasn't so covered in noise as it is today. And I do mean noise, not just sound. Anyway, I could go much deeper into all of these topics, but I won't, unless you specify that you really want me to. But I love the primitive world for its physicality, for its poetic reasoning, and for its silence. Next week, I'm hoping to synthesize these ideas, and I'm hoping I can get it done by next week, because I really want to give a coherent, concrete system for anyone who would want to live a more holistic life, and I think it'll take some serious thought and consideration. So, we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.